what do you make, Mr. Dunham, of the timing of this specific attack?
Well, the timing is related to the chemical weapons attack, and I think it all is tied to a very bad miscalculation made by Bashar al-Assad after the Trump administration last week said that it basically could live with him in power, and then the chemical weapons attack, and then the Trump administration completely reversed itself very quickly.
Of course, there are different views, Mr. Babich, about whether there were chemical weapons by the administration in Syria and whether the government, conducted these attacks.
Well, there was a demand from Russia, from China, from many international actors for an investigation of this chemical attack, which took place in Syria. But what we have seen until now, it was just the footage mostly produced by the so-called white helmets, which is suspected by many of not being a very objective organization. So it's not understandable for Russians and for a lot of other people around the world why President Trump could not wait until UN inspectors would come to the place of the attack and find out exactly what happened. He preferred to strike in this way, undermining his credibility, because, as Rick rightly said, just 3 days ago, Mr. Trump said that the United States was not fighting President Assad, it was fighting the so-called Islamic State in Syria. Now it turned out that he lied.
There are different views, of course. From Syria, the regime itself is said that this is brutal aggression. Well, from the Russian side, it has also indicated this is a break of international law, and it's likely to put much shadow on the relations between Russia and the United States, which is already experiencing some ups and downs recently. Mr. Dunham, what do you think this incident might mean?
It completely changes the Trump administration equation. I mean, he was elected on a platform of rapprochement with Russia, and in the last month or two, there's been a change amid all of the investigations going on of Russian involvement in the U.S. election. And I think this means it's going to be almost impossible for him to work with President Putin on a diplomatic solution. And I think we're likely to have a situation where you could see more military, U.S. military involvement, which is something when he ran for president, he said would not happen in Syria.
That's right. We're going to talk about that part a bit later. Before I go to the Chinese guest, let me ask the Russian panelists once again, because at this point, Russia already reacted. You are also suggesting that there are likely to be ships sent to the logistic base in Syria through the Mediterranean Sea. So, Mr. Babich, is there going to be military escalations and further tensions in Syria and areas around it?
Well, I hope there won't be an escalation, because right now it's just a one-off strike. Let's hope that it will remain a one-off strike. In general, Russia has condemned the action. It has called it an aggression. But let me remind you that we also called the NATO's attack against Yugoslavia an aggression, but still we had negotiations, and we invited the former General Secretary of NATO, Javier Solana, to Moscow. So Moscow is tolerant and China is tolerant. The United States is not so tolerant, unfortunately. And right now, Russia is not threatening any military action. Russia is just reminding Mr. Trump that just recently in 2013, the United States and Russia together urged the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons to remove the chemical weapons from Syria. And this organization, OPCW, they got a Nobel Peace Prize for removing these weapons from Syria. Syria was declared officially by OPCW, which is a UN organization,
what are you saying?
As a country where the government surrendered its chemical weapons. So the only way chemical weapons could appear was most likely from the side of the opposition, which no one checked. OPCW did not check the Syrian opposition. They checked the Syrian government.
Okay. Mr. He, Ms. He, we see a lot of things happening over the past 24 hours, even in the Middle East, related to the Middle East. This strike, before that, Mr. Jared Kushner the son-in-law of President Trump went to visit Iraq. And then almost at the same time, Secretary Tillerson of the United States went to visit Egypt. And then there is a strike like this. All sides reacted, including Russia, Syria, Iran, the other members of the Security Council. How do you read these very mixed events within a very short period of time?
Yes, I think apart from those visits you mentioned, also, the President Trump has met a number of Arab countries, those heads of states, to the White House. So which means he has already asking around some opinion coming from those Middle East countries. But this move, the airstrike also is a very risky one. It has two gains and two, the lost. I think those two gains mainly towards the domestic people.
Explain, please.
Yeah, one thing is he shows himself is totally different from President Obama, because when the President Obama meet this chemical weapon bottom line, and then Obama retreat. So he didn't show his tough. So, but now Trump is different. Even this red line has been touched, even though the investigation has been done, but he have to do something. So he shows himself different. Secondly, he shows himself is a guy, is a man. He means what he said. So he wants to set this image.
Is that message going to be necessarily get across to anybody else? Do you think he's having other targets?
Probably, yes. He has named the like DPRK, he will act along, whatever. So those two lost, I think he's lost those chances for have a cooperation with Russia to defeat ISIL. Another lost is this all the Syria peace process.
I see. Among the strikes, only 23 out of 59 actually worked, Mr. Babich, on the ground. So far, the latest reports, 6 people died on the ground in that airbase. But according to American media, Russia was previously informed about this specific strike. So what do you make of the very low efficiency of this strike and the apparent efforts made by Washington to so-called informed Russia?
Well, I don't think that Russia was informed on the high level or was properly informed about this strike, because it came as a complete surprise. It was a night time in Moscow. I got my first phone calls from my foreign colleagues about a strike at 6 o'clock in the morning in Moscow. And the Russian Foreign Ministry came up with a statement about 3 hours later. So we were not prepared for that strike. It was visible from Putin's behavior, from the behavior of our foreign minister. But we have nothing to hide. I think the people who need to be embarrassed now are the people in the United States and in the EU who have been pushing the conspiracy theory about the so-called Russian influence on the American elections, on Mr. Trump being some kind of a Russian agent. Now the idiocy of these allegations has been exposed. If Mr. Trump is a Russian agent, why is he striking at a base where Russian planes could be located? So in a way, I think that Mr. Trump decided to make this strike mostly for interior policy considerations.
Right.
He has been under enormous pressure from the people in the United States who wanted war. So he delivered them war in exchange for a brief period of peace inside the United States. But I don't think this period will last long. They will continue trying to remove him later.
I'm not sure whether President Trump would necessarily agree with you, but it's apparently bipartisan support for this specific strike, even though there are questions about the so-called constitutionality of this decision without the confirmation from the Congress about striking a foreign country. Having said that, though, Ms. He, China said, Foreign Ministry, made very clear 3 things. 1, against any kinds of chemical weapon use of it in any country, anywhere, by anybody. Secondly, there has to be specific investigation of what exactly is going on. Thirdly, China would only welcome concrete evidence to reach a conclusion that will be tested by history. Having said that, though, there were an Iraq war in which there was false reasoning of the war. Anything, lessons we should learn from that? But on the other hand, how much can we do to avoid and also abandon the chemical weapons around the world?
Yes, I think the Iraqi war has given us a very, the serious lessons we need to learn, because that cost thousands of money, millions of money, and millions of people's life, and then to prove that's a false intelligence information. So this time around in Syria, I also recall like 2013, 2012, a number of chemical weapons saying has been there, but then the investigation has been taking such a long time and led by the UN, and then haven't reached the final conclusion. So why this time, just 2 days later, and then the President Trump make such a rush decision?
Your point is?
So my point is, it's a quite rush action, and also it's quite risky. It hasn't taken into consideration of all those consequences.
The question is, eventually, what is going to be the Middle East policy for the United States? I guess that is the ultimate question, Ms. Dunham. Of course, when crisis come, presidents act, but will it act in a way that is going to be with the future strategy in mind? Mr. Dunham.
I think we're seeing the new Trump policy come into focus, and it's a different one than what he said on the campaign trail. I mean, he and his administration have talked to the leaders of Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Israel and Turkey, and all of them spoke out in favor of his attack on Syria. It's telling you that he is trying to put together the Sunni Muslim coalition that wanted to overthrow Assad from the beginning, and Israel is going along with it. And so it's a very interesting pivot from where he was before, which was the United States should not be involved in as much in these international issues where American strategic interests are not at risk.